What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to another horror movie review here on the Movie Mosh Pit channel. And today I'm going to be sending things all the way back to 2018 with the first film in the chronological order of the Conjuring series. You guessed it, The Nun. And you might be wondering, Robbie, why are you taking us 7 years back in time to review what has been universally deemed as one of the worst in the entire Conjuring franchise? Well, there's a good reason for that. As you may or may not know, in just a few weeks after this video drops, the 9th film in the Conjuring universe is going to be released. And although I've never really been a huge fan of the Conjuring series, I actually can't even remember which ones I've actually seen and which ones I haven't. My girlfriend freaking loves them, and she's really excited for this new one to drop. So I thought it'd be a fun little task to embark on to rewatch / first watch the series from the start all the way down to the new number 9. That way I'll be nice and refreshed by the time this new one comes out here in early September. But for someone like me who's not super stoked on this franchise as it is, what a fucking reintroduction this one was. Good lord. But let's get into it. So the movie starts off with these two nuns at this cloistered abbey somewhere in Romania. They're lurking down in the depths of the building in a hallway littered with crosses of different shapes and sizes. Finally, they come up to a large wooden door at the end of a hallway with a banner over the top reading "God ends here." And they decide, we should definitely take a gander and see what's inside of there. And wouldn't you know it, things instantly go horribly wrong. The nun that entered the room is ravaged by some unforeseen evil entity. But before she gets dragged away into darkness for all eternity, she gives the surviving nun a special key and tells her not to let the evil get to her. So naturally, this other nun hightails it the fuck up out of there and straight to her bedroom. But instead of packing her bags and leaving the abbey, preferably after dousing the whole place in a heap of lantern oil and lighting that whole motherfucker up like a gender reveal party gone wrong, she ties a sheet around her neck and jumps out the window instead. And after her body is found serving as a full course fillet for the local crows the following day, word gets to the Vatican and they send over one of their exorcism MVPs named Father Burke, and a nun in training that also has a history of having special visions. And they're sent to investigate why such a horrific tragedy has occurred. And what they end up finding is an evil far more powerful than they ever could have anticipated. Oh, and by the way, before we get too deep into this thing here, this review is probably gonna get a little spoilery. I mean, it's been 7 fucking years, my guy. If you haven't seen this movie yet, and for some reason you're watching this review, it's kind of your fault. But either way, you've been warned. Proceed at your own risk.
God ends here.
Alright, so as I started watching this movie, I quickly remembered it's one that I'd definitely seen before. I'm pretty sure we probably would have went to the theater to watch it back when it was released, and I probably walked out thinking something like, this movie wasn't that bad. And after rewatching it last night with fresh eyes and a new perspective, I'd have to agree with that doughy-eyed little scamp of the past. But see, here's the thing. I was right. This movie isn't half bad. It's not half bad at all. Because for it to be half bad, that would mean it would also have to be half good. And it's by no means half good. Realistically, it's more like maybe 30 to 35% good, with the remaining percentages just being filled with a slew of overused jump scares, a cast of undeveloped characters, and a story that never really feels like it captures you in an interesting way. There were multiple scenes where demonic hands were emanating out of the darkness, gripping people in their unholy grasps. But unfortunately, their infernal hands were not strong enough to grip me. But hey, before we get on to everything that sucked with this movie, let's start off on a more brighter note of the things that I actually did like. Because there was actually a few good things. Now, normally I'm not a fan of religious horror movies. I mean, you'll still likely find my ass in the theater seat anytime a new one drops, but you're even more likely to find me rolling my eyes every 30 seconds or so when I'm sitting there in that seat. But thankfully, this movie wasn't just another poorly executed religious horror movie for me to roll my eyes at. It was actually a very visually satisfying Gothic religious horror movie with a setting that felt like an absolute treat to feast my eyes upon. And what I really loved about this is that the studio didn't just try to fake the scenery in a vacant parking lot somewhere in bumfuck New Jersey. No, they actually packed up all their camera gear, loaded it onto a plane, and filmed this movie in Romania at a legitimate 15th century Renaissance style castle. And filming on location like this really intensified the doomy, gloomy atmosphere they were going for. You get these sweeping establishing shots of luminous looming and weathered stone walls. You see multiple towers of varying shapes and sizes standing tall above the walls. And then there's this mounting sense of unease as you take in the vastness of this castle. It's a place where you could easily get lost, a place where you could disappear forever. It just feels like you're staring into something ancient, a structure filled with secrets, a place intended to be sacred, now overrun by a unspeakable evil. And that feeling doesn't just stop at the walls. It travels deep inside, through the mountainous wooden doors, into the dim lit corridors, past intricately carved support beams and archways, and all the way down into the sunken, claustrophobic catacombs below. And there's also this like bluish filter that seems to be kind of layered over the background in certain scenes. And that paired along with some pretty heavy fog type effects add an even further level to this atmospheric doom, creating a very chilling and hazy environment for the horror to work in. And when you're faced with the deranged corpse of a recently deceased nun, or being sucked through the catacombs into the arms of a hungry demon, I think those elements really make those scenes feel so much creepier. And continuing down this atmospheric vein, the sound design was such another big highlight for me in this movie. It worked in tremendous tandem with the setting to really evoke a strong sense of dread and tension. And what I found to be most effective, and truthfully pretty goddamn creepy, were the Gregorian chants. Voices that were so deep and ominous they could have been summoned straight from hell themselves. And anytime you heard those haunting and brooding chants, those pesky little hairs on the back of your neck started to stiffen up a little bit, because you knew that meant Valik was close by. And when this movie actually allowed some anticipation to build, instead of just pelting you with another tired and uninspired jump scare, I think these scenes actually had the potential to be the most unnerving. But the final positive-ish aspect I'll mention came from the cast. And I say positive-ish because although the performances themselves were done quite well, I think it must have been like either shitty directing, or maybe it was written in the script this way. But there were so many stupid and frustrating choices made by the characters. Like, I mean, at one point, well, hold on, this is actually leading into one of the negative points I wanted to make a little bit later on in the video. But you know what? Fuck it. We're gonna kick off the negatives right now. Because now that I'm talking about it, this is some shit that actually pissed me off in this movie. So I fucking hate it when characters make blatantly stupid decisions in horror movies. Like, sure, sometimes you might need a single stupid decision to be made that gets the story going or keeps the plot moving. But I feel like at pretty much every single point in this movie, when a character was faced with a decision to make, they always pick the absolute worst fucking decision imaginable. Like, take Frenchie for instance. After Father Burke tells him it's all good and he could leave the abbey for the night and head back to town to his house. I mean, firstly, it's fucking nighttime, and Frenchie is a local to this area and he understands the lore surrounding the castle and the reputation it has for how evil it's supposedly supposed to be. And he's just like, okay, sure thing, boss. I'll go ahead and leave by myself here in the middle of the night and walk back to my town that God knows how fucking far. I mean, surely nothing could go wrong here, right? And wouldn't you fucking know it, something instantly goes wrong. And that's just bad choice number one in this scene from Frenchie. Just number fucking one. So as he's leaving the abbey and walking through the fog-fueled cemetery, he sees this creepy silhouette of a nun out in the distance. And it is so obviously not a living person just based on the way it's acting and the way it's moving. And here comes stupid decision number two. Instead of just turning around and going back to the abbey, where at least he knows he's not alone, he sits there for a second and thinks to himself, should I go and chase this bitch? And I'm sure you can guess what his answer was to that question. Hey! Hey! So he goes and he starts trying to track her down in the cemetery, in the middle of the fucking night, with just a dumbass little lantern to guide him through the darkness, all for her to finally appear as the corpse of the hanging nun he'd found in the beginning of the movie. But this time, the rope doesn't hold her up and she falls right out of the tree and on top of him. And then she's basically like trying to fucking eat him or something. But of course, he's able to fight her off and barely escape with his life. And it's just like, my guy, my boy, my motherfucking mans, you did not need to be in that situation in the first place. And you definitely didn't need to go and chase that bitch down. Like, if I was the writer of this movie and I just watched you do that stupid shit, even though I wrote the movie myself, I still would have killed your dumbass for even having the audacity for being stupid enough to do the shit that I wrote down on a piece of paper. Jeez. You know, I will say it's not just Frenchie who seems to have left his brain on the nightstand when he woke up this morning, because all the main characters get their chance to shine in the spotlight of stupidity at some point in this movie. And I'm not going to go into every instance here, but just know there are so many more that I could bog you down with right now. And I'm almost fired up enough to do it. I swear, somebody better hold me back. Hold me back right now.
Hold me back, like Sean Penn in Mystic River. Is that my daughter in there? No, hold them back. Is that my daughter? No, hold them. Is that my... You're worthless.
Okay, and not only did all of these characters make a multitude of stupid decisions, but somebody must have also neglected to give these little puppies any milk when they were growing up, because their bones were so fragile and weak. And I'll leave Frenchie alone this time around, but when it came to Sister Irene, and especially Father Burke, it seemed like their character sheets were only half filled out before the camera started rolling. And by the time anybody realized, instead of filling in the blanks and rounding out these characters, somebody just suggested, hey, couldn't we just add in another camera swiveling jump scare? And yeah, that's pretty much what they did. So you've got Sister Irene. She's a nun in training who all throughout the movie makes it very clear that she's not officially a nun yet. And it almost kind of seems like she's doing so in a way where she's like contemplating if she even wants to be a nun. I don't know, something just felt kind of strange about the way she was presenting this information. And yes, in the third act, she does end up finally asking Father Burke to promote her to official nun status. But there really doesn't seem to be that much conviction in her choice. It's almost kind of like when you're dating a chick and she keeps asking you,
So, what are we?
and you're like, can't we just chill, baby? Damn. But finally, after she asks you for the 100th time, you're just exhausted and you begrudgingly ask her, hey, fine, be my girlfriend, whatever. That's kind of what this moment felt like to me. It doesn't feel like she's been so spiritually transformed or empowered in this new conviction that for some reason now is the time to become an official warrior of the Lord. And it doesn't really bring with it any new revelations or strengths. She appears to be essentially unchanged. And I feel like it kind of just leaves her character feeling pretty flat. Then we've got Father Burke, who's this big shot exorcism specialist for the church. But he's plagued by this guilt and responsibility that he feels to a child who was killed during an exorcism that he was leading. And all throughout his time at the abbey, the memories of this kid haunt him. And Valik uses this guilt against him to break him down even further in his spiritual fortitude. And this could have been an interesting enough, although incredibly unoriginal, arc for him to go through. You know, being plagued by this guilt, having it weaponized against him. But then in doing that, the logical conclusion would be to have him ultimately overcome it through like the power of faith or whatever, and having that deal some like significant blow to Valik's power over him. But no, they don't do shit with it. It just never gets resolved. Like in the climax of the movie, he has one little fight with this demon kid who's supposed to be the ghost of the kid that was killed, and it turns into a snake and like eats his fucking eye or something. And then that's it. Like, huh? What? It eats his eye? What the hell does that have to do with anything? He doesn't even beat it. It eats his eye and then it like disappears. And I just thought that was pretty fucking stupid. But that's going to lead me into my final negative points. And just as the character development fell flat on its face here, so too did the narrative as a whole. And I think there's actually a pretty specific reason for why that happened. I might have partially touched on it earlier, but you have all of these frustratingly obvious jump scares that don't seem related to the central plot at all. They're just kind of thrown in here every 5 or 10 minutes in an artificial attempt to be shocking and scary. And I think that actually detracts quite a bit from the story as a whole. And look, I'm not gonna sit here and say that none of those sequences were creepy or effective. Like, even the graveyard scene that I was bitching about just a few minutes ago with Frenchie was actually pretty creepy and well done. But it's like, what did that sequence have to do with the overarching plot at all? And that's what most of this movie felt like. Just a bunch of random jump scares, or even genuinely frightening scenes at times, that just could have been completely wiped out of this movie, and you wouldn't even have felt like anything meaningful was missing. So I think all of this commotion going on over here on the sidelines, and the fact that they never really reel you back in a significant way, really muddies up the plot and kind of makes you forget why you're even watching this movie in the first place. And it's definitely a shame, because with a villain as sinister as Valik at the helm, this movie had so much potential to be awesome, but they just sold it out for cheap scares instead. But anyways, there you have it, guys. That is going to be my review for The Nun. As we covered, there were some very strong positives in this movie and some sequences that I really enjoyed, but they were not strong enough to save this film from eternal damnation. And with that being said, I'm gonna have to rate this one a 2 out of 5 stars. I mean, if you're a fan of the Conjuring universe, of course, this is definitely going to be one that you're going to want to see at least once probably just once, just to make sure you get the full story experience of all the movies put together. But if you don't give a shit about The Conjuring, and you're just looking for a more fully fleshed out, actually compelling religious horror movie that uses more than just a bunch of cheap jump scares to keep the ball rolling, this is one you're definitely going to want to skip. But as always, my fellow movie moshers, drop your comments down below and let me know what you thought of The Nun. Do you have it scored as roughly as I do, or did you find it to be more thorough and satisfying than I did? Also, if you didn't hate my take as much as I hated all of Frenchie's bad and stupid decisions, please bless this little baby with a like. And if you enjoy seeing this schlubby mug slathered all over your silver screen, subscribe. But for real, thanks for sticking around to check out my review of The Nun. The next movie up on the list is going to be Annabelle Creations. And from what I've heard, this is supposed to be one of the best, or at least better, movies in the franchise. So that should be a nice little treat after having to endure this hellacious introduction. But I hope to see you guys there.